In the previous episode, we stopped at the moment when the king ordered all servants to leave the room, leaving him alone with Lydia. We also learned more about Salar's story, but now we discover that king is dead and the palace has fallen into complete chaos. And who was responsible for it? Stay with us. Welcome back to Axera Daily channel. Today we continue part 4 of Larasia's story. And finally we return to our main character, Kyrill. Let's see where he is and see what he's been doing. I think he's been watching my videos and living like on them. Come on bro, join the family and hit that subscribe and like button. Let's start the story. On the other side, a young man stood in the darkness, gripping a knife nervously. He couldn't clearly see the Kyrill and the others, only their strange clothes and unnatural presence. Kyrill was moments away from attacking him, when suddenly one of the young man's friends appeared. He was covered in blood, screaming that Larasia's soldiers coming. The young man immediately turned to Kyrill and said, "We need to leave, now." But Kyrill looked confused. Who exactly are we running from? Before a young man could answer, 10 soldiers from Larasia emerged from the darkness. Andromeda glanced at Kyrill and gave him a look. He instantly understood, and without hesitation, the two of them launched themselves at the soldiers. They sank their fangs into the soldiers' necks, killing them within seconds. But when one of the soldiers tried to attack Ambrosi, the young man instinctively stepped in and killed him first, though not before suffering a deep wound in his leg. The smell of his blood awakened something monstrous inside Ambrosine. For a brief moment, she nearly attacked him herself, before Kyrill grabbed her and stopped her. Oh, finally the fight is done. I tired while telling you the story. So, please like to push me through. Okay, Kyrill looked at the young man and said, "Thank you, you saved our daughter's life." At that moment, Andromeda noticed the injury and said, "Look, his leg is wounded." Kyrill replied casually, "What? Do you think he heals as quickly as we do?" After that, Kyrill back to the young man and asked, "Who are these people? And what exactly happening here?" The young man explained everything. The war between kingdoms, the destruction spreading across the land, and his plan to secretly enter Larasia. The moment Kyrill heard that, excitement appeared on his face. "Then, you are taking us with you." The young man proceeded immediately. "Your appearance alone would expose you the moment anyone saw you." But Kyrill simply told him, "It's your business, fix that problem and make us look normal." The young man let out a long sigh. "Alright, fine. Let's go." Later that night, while celebrations filled Larasia and noble carriages traveled toward the royal palace, Kyrill and the others waiting in the shadows for the perfect target. When a luxury carriage finally appeared, Kyrill stepped directly into the middle of the road, forcing it to stop. The driver immediately pulled the horses to a halt after spotting the large man standing silently in the darkness. "Hey, get out of here right now." But Kyrill didn't move an inch. The large guards stepped out of the carriage, drawing their swords to protect it. "Move aside before we kill you." Still, Kyrill remained completely motionless. The first guard charged toward her, raising his sword high, but before he couldn't even swing it, he suddenly collapsed it to the ground, choking as blood poured from his neck. Kyrill looked down at him calmly. Refreshing. The second guard rushed forward after seeing his companion fall, but Kyrill launched at him just as quickly, killing him within seconds. The driver froze in horror. With trembling hands, he grabbed the reins and desperately tried to flee, but the moment he turned around, he found another figure standing before him, a pale woman with long fangs. Andromeda killed him before he could even scream. After that, Ambrosine fed on the bodies, while Andromeda searched the carriage. After a little of searching, the young man said, "You are lucky. Before that carriage belonged to nobles from the distant kingdom of Helios," and that gave him the perfect disguise. The young man became the carriage driver, while Kyrill and Andromeda took on the identities of the noble couple. Together, they headed straight toward the royal palace. Meanwhile, Salar stepped out of his room and saw his personal guard, Leonid, who was 2 years older than him. Salar looked at him and smirked. "Hey." Leonid straightened himself. "Do you need something, your highness?" Salar said, "Switch clothes with me." Leonid blinked and confused. But no talking, just do it, as you wish, your highness. Salar changed into his guard's clothes, so he could leave the palace without attracting attention. As he quickly walked outside, he muttered to himself, I wonder if I can actually sneak down the palace like that. About 2 hours later, the carriage carrying Kyrill, his family, and the young man finally arrived near the palace. However, the young man decided to take another road leading toward the city. But one of the guards immediately stopped him and said, Where are you going? The young man tried to stay calm. I am taking the shortcut, the guard said. There is no shortcut, just keep going straight. With no other choice, the young man continued toward the palace. Kyrill then leaned closer and asked, So, what do we do now? The young man said, We don't have many options. We'll enter the palace first, and from there we'll find another way into the city. As soon as they arrived, they saw countless noble carriages lined up outside the palace gates. Some nobles were already complaining loudly, while the guards and servants struggling to calm everyone down. The young man turned toward Kyrill and whispered, Come on, let's slip into the garden and disappear in the chaos. After walking for a while, Kyrill suddenly stopped and looked around. Wait, this place is way too organized and quiet. I think we got lost. The young man sighed nervously. You are right. Actually, I think we're still inside the palace grounds, and somehow we're only going deeper into it. At the same time, Ambrosian wandered away alone after smelling something powerful in the air. Blood. A few moments later, she stopped near a beautiful fountain. Suddenly, someone hit her lightly from behind and shouted, Who are you? Ambrosian turned around, annoyed. Oh, what was that for? And who are you? Standing behind her was a small boy, holding a wooden sword pointed proudly at her. He said, Do you want to play with me? By the way, my name is Artem. Ambrosian stared at him silently. Artem lowered the sword awkwardly. If you don't wanna play, then never mind. But then she quietly replied, I am Ambrosian. He said, what? She said, Ambrosian, that's my name. He said, that's a weird name. So, does that mean you will play with me? Before she could answer, Ambrosian heard the voices of her parents calling for her. Then she said, sorry, I have to go now. Before leaving, she handed Artem her bracelet. Next time, I will play with you. Shortly after, the servants arrived and took Artem back to the palace, while Ambrosian hurried back to her parents. But no one noticed the body of a blood-covered girl lying behind the wall nearby. A few moments later, Ambrosian found Kyrill and Andromeda. Kyrill then said, let's return to the palace and continue pretending to be nobles from Elios, because the young man already went into the city. At that same moment, the red-haired servant hurried into the room where Radia had been left alone with the king. The moment she entered, she froze. The king's body was laying lifeless on the floor, while doctors and guards surrounded him. In the corner of the room, the servants were crying in terror. She quickly approached one of them and asked, what happened? The servant looked up at her in shock. Where were you, Joyce? What happened, Ruby? Ruby looked up at her in shock. Where were you, Joyce? Wait. Ruby? Is it that the poor girl from before? Yeah, the king had taken her. By the way, if you don't remember who Ruby is, go watch the previous episode in the link. And don't forget to hit that like button. And subscribe button also. Okay, let's continue. Joyce ignored that and immediately asked, forget where I was. Where is Radia now? And what are they going to do to her? Ruby lowered his voice. Luckily, nobody knows she was the girl inside the room with him. But unfortunately, they are going to interrogate all of us to find the killer. A few moments later, one of the guards shouted, take them one by one until one of them confesses. I don't care how you do it. At that moment, the servants looked at each other in fear, remembering what had happened 3 days earlier. Okay, I think this conversation is getting way too long. I will save it for the next video. So subscribe if you wanna know what really happened between the servants 3 days ago. Come on, do it! Anyway, back to Kyrill. At that time, Kyrill and his family were staying in one of the palace wings after the guards assigned private rooms for every noble while they waited to meet the king. Kyrill set a massive dining table filled with the finest foods imaginable. But Ambrosian frowned and complained loudly, I wanna blood, Dad! I wanna blood! Andromeda sighed. What are we supposed to do, Kyrill? We can't eat this kind of food. Kyrill looked serious. We have a bigger problem than food right now. Andromeda crossed her arms. And what could possibly be more important than food? At that moment, one of the servants entered the room and noticed they hadn't touched their meals. Then she said, excuse me, sir, was the food not to your liking? Kyrill suddenly slammed his hand against the table. Where is the chief? I wanna speak with him immediately. The terrified servant bowed quickly. Right away, sir. Follow me to the kitchen. Once they arrived, the chief nervously greeted him. My lord, how may I help you? Kyrill answered coldly. The food was terrible. The chief immediately panicked. Please, don't tell the king. He will kill me if he hears about it. Tell me what you want, and I will prepare it immediately. As Kyrill looked around the kitchen, he noticed a piece of raw meat nearby. I want 3 meals from that. Of course, Chief replied. I will cook it immediately. Kyrill quickly interrupted him. No, I want it exactly like that. Don't cook it. The people around him stared in confusion, making Kyrill realize his mistake. So he immediately added, bring me a portable grill. I will cook it myself. Then he calmly walked out of the kitchen. The chief watched him leave and muttered, for a second, I thought he was going to eat the meat raw. As Kyrill walked through the hallway, 2 guards suddenly approached him. Sir Erebos? Kyrill looked confused. You are Sir Erebos from the Kingdom of Helios, right? Kyrill said, yeah, that's me. Please come with us. The king requires your presence. Kyrill followed the guards into a heavily secured room. Becoming more nervous with every step, he immediately realized he had just walked into something dangerous. One of the guards finally spoke. Sir Erebos, the king was assassinated last night. Kyrill's eyes widened slightly. Then guard said, and we need you as a doctor to examine the body and help us discover the killer, or at least find some clue. Kyrill blinked. Why me? Aren't there other doctors in the palace? The guard stared at him suspiciously. What? Kyrill immediately realized he had made a mistake. Alright, sorry. I am still exhausted from the long journey. The guards pointed toward the king's body. Everything you need is ready. Begin immediately. Several soldiers stood around the room guarding the body, while Kyrill slowly picked up the knife and began examining the corpse. But the moment he cut open the king's chest and blood began pouring out, everything changed. A terrible thirst overwhelmed him. His fangs slowly emerged beneath the mask covering his face. The smell of blood became unbearable, and without warning, Kyrill suddenly rushed out of the room. One of the guards shouted, "What's wrong? Where are you going?" Kyrill said, "The bathroom. Now." Inside the bathroom, Kyrill struggled desperately to control himself. But then one of the servants entered. The girl looked at him politely. My lord, do you need help? Kyrill slowly looked at him and whispered, You bad luck, my good luck. In the next second, he attacked her and drained her blood. Moments later, Kyrill finally calmed down and returned to normal. But now there was a new problem, a corpse, and he had to hide him immediately. Suddenly, one of the guards knocked on the door. My lord, are you finished? Kirill's eyes winded. He quickly threw the body aside and prepared to attack the guard moment he entered. The guard placed his hand on the door, but before he could open it, a beautiful woman appeared behind him, and she said, Kyrill, dear, I'm coming in. At the same time, Ambrosin wrapped himself playfully around the guard's leg while holding the sword attached to his belt. And she said, Is this a game? The confused guard froze while Andromeda entered the bathroom and shut the door behind her. The moment she entered, she said, What did you do? Kyrill let out a relieved sigh. Handle it. I will explain later. I don't have time right now. Andromeda walked closer, then grabbed part of her dress and wiped the blood running from his lips down to his neck. If you wanted to protect yourself and protect us, then at least you cut yourself first. Kyrill smiled softly before leaving the bathroom, after returning to his normal appearance. Outside, Ambrosin hugged Kyrill and whispered, We smelled the blood, and we came as fast as we could. Kyrill laughed quietly. Thank you. Now back to your mother. There is a food meal for you. Kyrill eventually returned to the examination room and continued inspecting the king's body. A few moments later, he finally spoke. The king's was poisoned. The guard frowned. Poison? How? Kyrill said, Yes, but not with an ordinary poison. It was plant-based. Then Kyrill narrowed his eyes. Give me a little more time. I need to identify the exact plant. After sunset, Kyrill returned to his room where Andromeda immediately asked, So what happened? Kyrill smiled. The plan has changed. From now on, we stay here as a noble from Helios. My name is now Kyrill Erebos, and you are Andromeda Erebos, and our daughter carries the same name. Andromeda nodded. Understood. 2 days later, the kingdom officially announced the death of the king. Larasia fell into mourning for 3 entire days. Meanwhile, Salah remained inside the palace, under heavy protection while learning politics, leadership, and the art of ruling, until the day he would eventually turn 20. And a few days later, Andromeda gave birth a second daughter. Her name was Perina, a child as beautiful as the moon itself. But before that, where exactly was Salar during the king's death? And what was he doing outside the palace? And the most important thing, what really happened during that mysterious conversation? And the question is, what happened between the servants that night? All of that in the next episode. Just subscribe to know what happened. Bye.